It's the Saturday wrap edition of college football smothered and covered here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll talk about Notre Dame's upset. We'll talk about fraudulent Colorado and, of course, the big game in the big house. This is college football smothered and covered. And, of course, we are powered by Locked On.
You are Locked On College Football smothered and covered with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. It's Saturday night here in week 2 of the college football season, wrapping up all of the big stories. And you know what they say, every time it's a down week in college football, chaos happens. And what do we get in week 2? We got some chaos. Hey, thank you for making college football smothered and covered, powered by Locked On, your first listen every single day. Of course, you can find us on every single podcast provider and, of course, on YouTube as well. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In today's episode, brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code Locked On College. That's Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time, and it is time to talk about that big game in the big house. Now, I know what people say in hindsight. Michigan sucks. Michigan sucks. Well, Michigan did kind of suck on Saturday, but it wasn't because of anything that they did that is out of the ordinary. Michigan is a work in progress. It's a piece of art that ran out of paint. The artist had to go to the store because it's not complete yet. Now, yes, it's clear that Davis Warren is not the guy. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Yes, it's clear that Michigan's defensive front, even with a couple of studs, has some issues. Texas's offensive line, which is one of the best in the country, basically owned that game from the outset, built that lead, and they put it into cruise control. But let's not focus on what Michigan isn't. Let's focus on what Texas is. And right now, they're part of the big three. It's Georgia, it's Ohio State, and it's Texas. Because you don't go on the road in front of 100,000 plus and do to the defending national champs what Texas did without being a damn good football team. And that's exactly what Texas is. I saw on some pregame shows that the question was asked, is Texas back? And I kept thinking to myself, the hell are we talking about here? Of course Texas is back. They made the playoff last year. They beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa and made the playoff and was one throw away from making the national championship game. And then who knows what would have happened in that national championship game. Texas was already back. What Saturday proved is that it might be better than ever, and better than ever in the sense that it can play smash mouth, old school, SEC style football in Big Ten country, but also can open it up because we know they can open it up when they want to. They didn't have to against Michigan. So yeah, Texas is back. It really didn't go anywhere from last year because it was back last year. And if you are saying, well, yeah, but it's Michigan. Let me tell you something after working in this business for 22 years. We're all going to be talking at the end of the season, Team X ain't played nobody. Team X ain't played nobody. Like it literally happens in November every single year to every single team. Texas played a pretty good Michigan team. Is it what it was last year? Of course not. Is it one of the best in the Big Ten? Probably not. Is it still good? Yeah. Should they get worked like that at home? No. but they did because Texas is really good. Now, from the Michigan side, look, Davis Warren, he's all you got. I don't know what Alex Orji did in practice and in fall camp, but he must have been awful because Michigan definitely has a quarterback problem. And it has a little bit of a running back problem too. But look, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world, but it does confirm that, in my mind anyway, and I wrote this on Outkick, there are certain schools that can sustain success, right? Urban Meyer in Florida in the late 2000s, obviously Alabama in the 2010s, Clemson in the late 2010s, Georgia now. These are programs led by coaches who know what buttons to push. Sherrone Moore doesn't know what buttons to push. He hasn't even done this before, except for 3 games last year. So to me, and I wrote this, and I don't want to say that Michigan is going to go in the tank like the teams I'm about to compare them to, but 2011 Auburn, post-national championship, post-Cam, went 8-5, won the Peach Bowl. 2020 LSU was a disaster after winning the 19 national championship, went 5-5 during the COVID year. Orgeron was fired the next season. Chizik was fired the next season at Auburn. Is that what's going to happen to Michigan? No, but I think what we saw today is that the path is much more likely going in that direction than it is to become a superpower. That's just the way it is. What also is the way it is that Notre Dame's offense is a mess, man. Notre Dame's offense, I was a believer in Notre Dame. You guys know that. I thought that Notre Dame was fully capable of being a dynamic offense with Riley Leonard. I think what we saw against Northern Illinois is that Riley Leonard ain't it. He averaged 5.1 yards per pass through 2 picks. His QBR for the game was 26. Jeremiah Love had that one highlight reel touchdown, but by and large, that game was a disaster offensively for the Fighting Irish. Didn't break 300 yards. Look, I was wrong about Notre Dame. With that said, can that team with that offense still make the playoff? The answer is yes. The answer actually is yes. You look at the schedule, and yeah, I mean, there's a pretty decent shot that they still make it because that defense is still lights out. But if you saw Thomas Hammock after the game crying on the post-game interview, and if you've seen the post-game celebrations, we did not need luck or all that other stuff. I mean, that is what this sport is all about, right? A guy who goes in there with a full heart, with clear eyes of what his program is, building it from the ground up, togetherness, weaving through these tough times in terms of transfer portal in a way that you can still be successful. To have that moment is great, man. That's what college football is all about. I'm fascinated to see what this does for Northern Illinois moving forward in the MAC, because they've been pretty good in the past. Obviously went to the Orange Bowl, after the 2012 season. They've had their moments. But man, Notre Dame, I'm disappointed with all of it. It almost seems like they were reading their names and headlines a little too much. But it's only one blemish. The playoff is sitting right there for Notre Dame. It's still sitting right there for Notre Dame. There are pieces to build off of. Mike Denbrock's got to figure it out quickly, though. You know Jeremiah Love can play. Riley Leonard, when healthy, is a superstar. It doesn't look like he's healthy. It looks like he's apprehensive. It doesn't look good at all. But still hope. Not much of it, but still hope. We will take a break. When we come back, we are going to talk about fraudulent Colorado and a Nebraska team that just was a delight to watch on Saturday night in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's college football smothered and covered. And of course, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, this show brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, only over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring, and you should be one of those as too. Post your job on the free linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege site. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. All right. My colleague at Outkick was out there in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I'll tell you what, that game played out the exact way that I thought it would play out. Shiloh Sanders had his moments. Dylan Raiola had his moments. The offensive line could not protect Shedeur Sanders at all. That's not something you fix. If you've watched this show over and over and over and over again, you know what I've been telling you. That cannot be fixed. It cannot be fixed. Colorado is a one-trick pony. It's Sanders finding Hunter. That's it. That's all it can do. And so when a good defense like Nebraska comes to town, they see that and say, look, man, if you burn us somewhere else, tip the hat, move on. Congratulations. But Nebraska's too good. The way they brought pressure on Shedeur gave him so little time to find Hunter or Horn or anybody else that I felt bad for him. And I put this on Twitter and I said, look, I feel really bad for Shedeur Sanders. Say what you will about him as a dude. I personally don't have a massive issue with him, but he's Deion's son. He's the quarterback. He's the one that's out front. I get it. If you don't like it, fine. I don't understand how you can watch Colorado play and come out with any other conclusion than Shedeur Sanders is an absolute monster, and I feel bad for him because he's not getting any help up front. Think about what would happen if he just had a decent offensive line. He'd be the talk of the town. He would live up to those EA Sports power rankings, the ratings before the season came out where he was one of the best players in college. He is one of the best players in college football. I don't think there's any way to deny that. You may not like him personally, fine. You do you personally. I don't care. But it's okay to feel bad for him because I mean, look, this always blows my mind. He's a mobile quarterback, right? And sack yards are counted in rushing yards. Last year, a mobile quarterback in Shedeur Sanders, who is really good, finished with negative 60-something yards because of sack yardage. The guy can ball out and he gets no help. But that's what Colorado is. It's all sizzle. It's no steak. And by steak, that means the big dudes up front. Nebraska has them. Colorado doesn't. So let's flip it around. We can sit here and talk about Colorado. Everyone knows Colorado. You already have an opinion on Colorado. Everybody has an opinion on Colorado already. Let's not lose sight of the fact that Matt Rule has turned Nebraska around to a point where they expect wins like that. They didn't go into that game thinking, oh, we're going to try to conquer big bad Colorado. No, they went into that game thinking, we're the boss. We're the monster. We're the gorilla. And we're going to prove it with all eyes on us. And that's exactly what they did. That was not a case. Okay, look, yes, Nebraska owned Colorado because Colorado is trash. They also looked really good. You can have both of those things happen, just like Texas, Michigan. You can look at a game and say, wow, that team dominated. Yes, they dominated in the way they should. That's hard to do. And Nebraska did it. And we've all heard them. We all seen the stat. It's like 12 one-score games over the last 3 years, whatever it is. They're sick of it. They're sick of it. That's a damn good football team. And so, yes, limiting Shedeur and Travis Hunter actually is a big deal. But it was an announcement to, I think, the world that, you know what? We're back to a point where we're going to compete in the Big Ten, or at least be relevant in the Big Ten. And that's what they're going to be. That's what they're going to be. Was happy to see that, because I think that Matt Rule's one of the best coaches in the country as a college head coach. NFL, whatever, don't care. Spurrier failed. Saban failed. Doesn't matter. I'm not saying Matt Rule's those guys. It's a different sport, though. Urban failed. It's a different sport. But happy for that. Huge, huge, huge win for Nebraska. I can't wait to see what the ratings for that game were, because they were, I guarantee you, they were high. All right, we'll take a break. Coming up next, we'll talk about the SEC. We'll also hand out some superlatives for week 2. It's college football smothered and covered. And of course, we are powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. The show brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. What is Game Time Picks? Filters out all the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. They have curated deals and make it easier for you to find the best price on great seats. They have the super deal. You can see seats before you buy. They have the lowest price guarantee, even an event cancellation policy, job loss protection, and everything else that goes along with serving you, the consumer. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, final segment. We are going to talk about the SEC, specifically the South Carolina Gamecocks. They'll be featured on Game Day next week. Play LSU. This was the game that Shane Beamer needed in a massive way. There were murmurings about Shane Beamer all offseason. Last week didn't help against Old Dominion. They were 9-point underdogs going to Kroger Field, which is a tough place to play. And they lay a 31-6 whooping on the homestanding Wildcats. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I never thought that was going to happen. Congratulations, South Carolina. You are the best team in the SEC by the numbers right now. They held a potent Kentucky offense to 183 yards. I know Vandegrift had his issues. They've got great receivers anyway. 44 passing yards. Look, we can sit here and talk about Lenora Sellers all day long, and if he's a player who's capable of winning games or whatever, I don't care. You have a defense like that, you're going to win a whole heck of a lot of games. Now, is South Carolina going to contend for the SEC? No, of course not. Is South Carolina going to contend for the playoff? No. But this performance to me showed that Shane Beamer is going to keep his job because he's got this team playing hard, just like Tennessee does. Because that 51-10 whipping of NC State was an announcement that, yes, Tennessee should be mentioned in the Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss group of the SEC. Tennessee should be there. Nico Imaliava had a decent game, right? We can sit here and say, oh my God, Nico is a great player. He is. We already know that. Can we talk about Dylan Sampson? Whew, buddy. Buck 32 and 2 TDs. You can weave him in the offense out of the backfield as a receiver too. Dylan Sampson to me is one of those guys that might come out of nowhere and be in the discussion for first team all SEC at the end of the season. He's probably already there now. But you can do it in so many ways if you're Tennessee. And that's what has to be encouraging, is that you can watch that game and see, okay, yeah, Nico played well. But look at this guy, look at that unit, look at all this other stuff that's working at a high level. Now, if you guys watched the show earlier this week, you know I'm not the biggest NC State guy. I'm not trying to diminish what Tennessee did, but I'm not the biggest NC State guy. Grayson McCall, I think, is pretty living off his COVID year for a couple of years now. But man, that is an announcement that Tennessee is back. Are they better than ever? I don't know. But man, what a game. Arkansas, that time management at the end of that game was embarrassing. You had a 21-7 lead. You lost it. It was embarrassing. Everything about that game was embarrassing. Everything. Taylon Green played his tail off. Couldn't do anything about it. Jaquavius Jackson played his tail off. Couldn't do anything about it. That defense, Travis Williams, I like Travis Williams as a defensive coordinator. That should not happen. It simply should not happen. That's a game that decision makers at Arkansas are going to look at and say, okay, yeah, maybe Oklahoma State's pretty good, but it's more about the guy in the mirror, the team in the mirror. And that one, undisciplined, unable to shut the door when it needed to, flat out embarrassing. All right, two more before we hit superlatives. One, Alabama. Is there anything to worry about with the close win over South Florida? Yes, it was close. I know the score doesn't indicate that it was close. It's 42-16. It was close. It was a close game. The sloppiness is concerning. Jam Miller with 140 yards is great. Jalen Milroe had himself a day. But the biggest thing to me are the penalties. 13 for $120. 13 for $120. That's the kind of thing that can turn a fan base on you real quick. And we've seen the gif of the old lady, fix this blank. If you haven't seen it, it's out there. It's something that needs to be fixed. Now, if you're Kalen DeBoer, you're going, whew, got out of that one with a win. And there are about 50 different things we need to work on. Most notably discipline. That was an undisciplined team. That was an undisciplined game. And I tell you what, that South Florida team, they were not intimidated by Bryant Denny. Not at all. Cal certainly wasn't intimidated by Auburn. At what point, if you're Hugh Freeze, do you give up this whole Peyton Thorne experiment? Because it has to happen soon, right? Look, Peyton Thorne at his best is pretty good. The problem is, if he's not at his best, he's horrible, god-awful, throwing ground balls everywhere. And it didn't help that his offensive line against Cal was a disaster. So, look, I don't think there's anything you can do if you're Hugh Freeze. You're just going to have to hope that you don't get the god-awful Peyton Thorne, because the other one's pretty good. I don't know why they got away from the run as much as they did. It seemed like Jarquez Hunter disappeared for a little while, and the defense could not slow down Mendoza at all. One of the most efficient performances from a quarterback we've seen in a very long time. Unfortunately for Auburn fans, this is kind of what you get with Freeze, too. You get last year where you almost beat Georgia, should have beat Alabama, but you lose to New Mexico State. You get this year where you come out, you look lights out, the offense looks like it's clicking, and then it looks like the bad games from 2023 all over again. I don't know. All right, let's get out superlatives. First, we're going to go to Pretender of the Week. While we're on the negative, we're going to go to Pretender of the Week. And that is Kansas. I think we're going to look back and say, okay, a loss to Illinois is not the end of the world. And obviously, it doesn't affect their conference championships hopes. But I thought Kansas, and I think I picked them 7-5 before the season. I looked at that team and I was like, okay, if it's Jalen Daniels, fine. He doesn't have anybody else to work with all that much, and he's injury prone. So how can you trust them? Well, when you go play a team like Illinois, fundamentally sound, big on the line of scrimmage, you're going to run into some problems. And that's exactly what happened. I never really bought Kansas as the 19th best team in the country. That's where they were in the AP Top 25 this week. Never really bought them as a Big 12 contender. And now you see why. They're a one-trick pony. And when they play a team that can punch them in the mouth, they don't get up very easily. So they are my Pretender of the Week. Clutch Performance of the Week. We could sit here and say it's Northern Illinois, but okay, we're going to mix it up a little bit. Kyle Conradi, Iowa State. Field goal at the end in Kinnick Stadium to win the Cy-Hawk Trophy. I don't think people outside of that state recognize what that means. That's like the Iron Bowl. That's like the Egg Bowl. That's how big that game is. And for Iowa State to have that trophy, Iowa's been dominating that series for a while now. For Iowa State to have it, that will make people cry tears of joy for 364 days. And for that young man to go out there and win a rivalry game like that, you're a legend. You're a legend forever. So that is my clutch performance. Best performance, of course, Tennessee. I don't think that's much of a shock, but Tennessee, look, again, I'm not the biggest NC State guy, like whatever, but that offense is good. More importantly, that offense is dynamic. There are a lot of different things that Josh Heupel can do with that, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of it as the season progresses because, look, you've got a little taste. You got the appetizer right now. You know he's got something up his sleeve. So best performance goes to the Tennessee Volunteers. That will do it for this edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. Hey, thank you for making this your first listen. For your second listen, go to Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin has you covered with everything going on in the world of college football as well. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We will be back with a Monday episode unless breaking news changes everything on Sunday. But it will be Monday when I guarantee you I will see you next. Until then, have a great night. Have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you soon.